appears that the Sammy Sosa Cubs exile is ending imminently. He has released a letter to all Cubs fans, an open letter, in which he apologizes for past actions. And any minute now, we are expecting a positive and welcoming response from Cubs owner Tom Ricketts. Here is the letter from Sammy Sosa. I left it all on the field for the Cubs and Cubs fans because I wanted to win and make the fans happy. I love to see the fans at Wrigley and the right field bleachers every home game. I understand why some players in my era don't always get the recognition that our stats deserve. There were times I did whatever I could to recover from injuries in an effort to keep my strength up to perform over 162 games. I never broke any laws, but in hindsight, I made mistakes and I apologize. We accomplished great things as a team, and I worked extremely hard in the batting cage to become a great hitter. Cubs fans are the best in the world, and I hope that fans, the Cubs, and I can all come together again and move forward. We can't change the past, but the future is bright. In my heart, I've always been a Cub, and I can't wait to see Cubs fans again. Sincerely, Sammy Sosa. Breaking news on 670 The Score is presented by BetQL. Smarter bets start with BetQL. Download the BetQL app or visit betql.com today.
It's big news, not unexpected, but just you didn't know it was going to happen this offseason. It could have been next offseason or next season. You never knew when this was going to come, but this is expected, Dan. This is where we were hoping to get to quicker sooner rather than later. I like this for Sammy Sosa, obviously. I like this for the Cubs. Feels like, okay, we've solved this issue that had been kind of lingering over Sammy Sosa. Even back, was it last year? He was here for a minute and it's kind of a controversial, got mad at the line of questioning. Maybe we can put this all behind.
Here's the statement from Tom Ricketts
that
has just come out. This is from the Twitter of our own Chris Emma. We appreciate Sammy releasing his statement and for reaching out. No one played harder or wanted to win more. Nobody's perfect, but we never doubted his passion for the game and the Cubs. It is an understatement to say that Sammy is a fan favorite. We plan on inviting him to the 2025 Cubs convention, and while it's short notice, we hope that he can attend. We are all ready to move forward together. Well, that's a big deal.
How does this get brokered even?
Sammy had to apologize. I'm a little disappointed that he used the recover from injuries shield. Because that goes back to like Andy Pettit and everybody who said, well, sure, I used all these performance-enhancing drugs, but it was only to recover from injury. Just own it. Own it. You used them to be big and strong and hit the ball far.
That's what A-Rod did, right?
Everybody had some variation, I stopped using them because I wanted to lose weight and get more range of motion and flexibility. There's any number of these old tropes that they've used, but
unless you're Raphael, then you just point
and wag your finger.
Yes.
So, okay, good. Yeah, I don't. It doesn't really affect me. I was never a big Sammy fan because I was a reporter, I was covering him. I was in the locker room, and I knew what his teammates felt about him, so I've got some pretty complicated feelings about Sammy. I mean, personally, he was always fine with me. I never really he never mistreated me.
How did his teammates, by and large, feel about it?
They didn't like the Church of Sammy. They didn't like the vainglory. They didn't like his Sammy had unlimited control over who was in that tiny little clubhouse. And like random people and random hangers-on and friends of friends of friends he would just invite in, and that clubhouse was the size of this room.
Right.
I'm not exaggerating. So it was hard a lot of the time because Sammy's people were just in and around the team all the time.
Okay.
And it bugged me.
I needed that context. Okay, so now we move forward?
Sure. Yeah. There are some people for whom this is much more meaningful as fans of a certain age, who came up and were little kids when Sammy was a larger-than-life superhero.
I wasn't a little kid. I was college.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like,
what's going on?
I knew what was going on. I was not ignoring the fact. And I think for me personally, this whole steroid era thing, it's just a thing that exists, and I can't get too worked up about it. I can't get too sanctimonious about it. I just can't get it happened.
Yeah, I used to feel differently about it.
So what happened with your own processing of it?
I think time. I think distance from it, and I think just caring less about what it meant, especially caring less about the Hall of Fame and some.
So you used to care more about the Hall of Fame than you do now?
I used to. Well, a lot of it too is I've encountered since the whole steroid scandal. I've encountered so much more real injustice and horror and misery through sports and really awful things that happened that I can't muster up.
This doesn't really hold a candle to the things you've seen.
The indignation. I mean, for a lot of personally for me, what happened at Penn State changed everything for me.
Just your entire perspective.
Everything changed. Every college scandal. It changed the idea, the nature of fandom. Like I emerged from that in that whole calendar year or more is just thinking differently with some perspective on how where we're going to be on a high horse and when we're not going to be.
I think that's fair. I think for me, the skepticism of fandom in itself was always there, and I was just like, I like this. I enjoy consuming this. I like going to games. I like covering sports. But once you do it long enough and see that it really is a microcosm of society, and we know how ugly society can be, it takes the luster off the shine. It's more gritty, and it really is reflective of where we are. And so, like, people worshiping teams and people, and the way it's gone beyond sports in itself. That's what really hits me, is the way it's gone beyond sports. It's gone into politics. It's gone into so many different things. And I think Charles Barkley was onto something when he said, "I am not a role model." Like that at first I thought it was hilarious, but he really was onto something. Like, there's other people in your lives that should be your role models above quote unquote professional athletes.
Yeah, but this is. I can understand why there are some people who are younger than I am, for whom Sammy Sosa was coincident with their love of the Cubs or their love of baseball, and it didn't matter that he was an action figure, that he was a cartoon character.
Yes.
In a lot of ways. He was larger than life, he was stronger than natural, and that's what people love. You went to the game to watch Sammy hit home runs. Now, they lost a lot of those games.
Yes.
A lot.
But you didn't miss the Sammy Sosa at bat.
But you didn't miss his at bats, and the games against the White Sox when those were crazy times and wild things happening and tempers flaring and loyalties and allegiances running and riding high. That if it makes you feel better, it's I think objectively nice, right? Isn't that as simple as that? It's objectively nice.
And it is also objectively a distraction from all the things in your life that you don't like.
Yeah, but look, if he's sorry, if he's legitimately sorry.
And only he knows that, by the way.
Sure, but this is a big step for him to admit anything remotely resembling wrongdoing.
Because he had held the line. He had held the line. He was the Hodor in this particular soap opera. Like, he was holding the door. I will never step off of this, but now he has. So good for him.
Yeah, it always felt a little odd when you started looking at team records and you started looking at history, that his outsized numbers, his ridiculous numbers, just weren't getting consideration as official or as real, or as it had the cognitive dissonance between people who at a formative age lived through and with and about the Sammy Sosa years, only to have them undone or have them cease to exist, can't be comfortable. And it takes away a big swath of happy times in people's sports lives to say that didn't happen, it didn't exist, he's gone. And remember, his departure was really ugly. Incredibly ugly. They couldn't wait. The Cubs organization and Andy McPhail couldn't wait to be rid of him, because they released those videotapes of the security cameras of him leaving the ballpark early. and they sent it out to the media, and it was basically trying to trash his reputation.
Right.
This is when Kerry Wood famously took Sammy Sosa's boombox, the villainous boombox with which Sosa's music sort of dominated. That was part of it too, that he played his music as loud as he wanted all the time, no matter what anybody else wanted. And at the end of the season after he left, they beat they did the Office Space fax machine routine on Sammy's boombox. And it was, legend has it, and I don't know if Kerry Wood has ever fully admitted to this, he probably has, that he was the first one to smash it.
Right.
So it was it ended, even in the moment, it ended in ugly and painful fashion. So there's going to be some gritted teeth and handshakes when certain people are there, but it's not the most powerful apology. But Sammy Sosa has written a letter, and he used the words, "I apologize." He doesn't say specifically for what, but he lets us fill in the blank. And because of that, I'm sure this was brokered, and this was an agreement to agree that Tom Ricketts will be inviting and is now inviting Sammy Sosa to the Cubs convention.
Do you think he'll talk to the media freely?
Yes.
Do you think he'll answer questions about the past?
I don't know. He's always hidden behind the language barrier in that regard. I don't know if he'll use an interpreter, because he may just say, look, my statement stands on its own. There will be some discomfort.
It's got to be.
Yeah.
It's got to be.
Yeah. It'll take time. It'll take time. But this was the big move. This was the big step. But it's going to be a process, I think, of healing. If people want to. There's got to be genuine atonement, and there's got to be some healing on behalf of the organization, on behalf of Sammy Sosa, his teammates, because that really set the tone. It wasn't just the fans. Is there going to be a photo op with Sammy and Kerry Wood?
That's what I'm asking. That's why I want to see just how uncomfortable it's going to get. That's my big thing, is I don't know how uncomfortable it's going to get. That's why, because you were here during that era. I was not here. I followed it. Obviously, I mean, I got WGN like everybody else. I'm following the Cubs, more focused on the White Sox, but definitely, hey, leadoff man came on. I was watching. Games comes on. I watched. I told you, a lot of days in the summertime was just baseball doubleheaders. We're going straight from the Cubs into the Braves. Superstations, I'm thankful for.
In March, Jarrett Payton, our previous guest, had a conversation with Sammy Sosa for WGN TV about his relationship with the Cubs.
Tom Ricketts has been here as well. Have you met him or ever talked to him?
Yeah, I talked to him a few times. Yes, in the past, definitely. And I mean, Tom Ricketts is a great, he's a great guy. I mean, so far so good. So, like I said, me coming to Chicago, I think it's going to be open a lot of door. I'm probably going to come back here, often, like I say, and let's see what happens.
Well, maybe there was enough détente to allow for some continued thawing and some introspection, and it allowed for Sammy Sosa to put that letter together that used some terms that we hadn't heard from him before. There were times I did whatever I could to recover from injuries in an effort to keep my strength up to perform over 162 games. I never broke any laws, but in hindsight, I made mistakes, and I apologize.
What were the mistakes, Sammy?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why we have to talk in euphemisms anymore.
And,
I think it would be more powerful if he said, yes, I used performance-enhancing drugs to enhance my performance. It doesn't have to be to recover from injuries. It doesn't have to be to keep my strength up. And we can say it.
I mean, but that's part of it. That's part of the use of to be able to recover. No, I'm saying that's part of it.
It is. It's not the primary reason, though.
No, it's not the primary reason.
Is to hit that thing 500 feet.
The drugs they were using even before then, the greenies and everything else.
Sure, those are performance-enhancing drugs.
What we're learning now, I think, more than ever, is just like it's hard to play 162 games in the summer.
Well, that's part of a lot of my reconsideration of the steroid era is understanding the amphetamine era was a massive competitive advantage.
Exactly. And so people use that. People use the steroids. And
Well, Willie Mays admitted to his use of the red juice, and nobody says boo about Willie Mays.
Exactly. And so I think it's not dangerous. You're just pushing in a direction in which it's a slippery slope, to use the very basic cliche. And that if you're going to judge that, you got to start judging other things. And then, okay, everybody's going to do what they can to be on the field.
Not to mention the number of fake prescriptions that they've received for ADHD, so players can have their Adderall.
Yeah,
and there's still a significant
and that helps
portion
them
of
focus
players on amphetamines. And the guys who would find the doctor that would diagnose them with that just so they could have amphetamines, so they could go out the night before.
This ain't nothing new,
and be up the next day.
This ain't nothing new.
It's not, and it is. There may be people who were confronting it as they were watching Sammy do great things, and there were others who didn't want to think about it, and were able to have to sort of switch those channels in their mind. You know, I did feel strongly at the time, and I did have some unique.
What was your feeling at the time?
Well, I also understood how disliked he was in that clubhouse. It was not a secret, and it was obvious. It was obvious, especially from Mark Grace.
But that had less to do with the idea of steroids, and more just how he was living and being a bad teammate.
Correct.
Okay.
But a lot of it also had to do with what I call the Church of Sammy, which would convene, and there were reporters who would literally kneel. We would laugh and we'd point, and we were like, such and such, this guy from the Sun-Times is kneeling at the foot of Sammy Sosa.
You said literally kneel?
Yeah. Yeah, we called it the genuflect. No longer in the business.
Why were they kneeling?
That's just they sold out. There were some reporters who would just wanted to get on.
You're
Sammy's
telling me a
side.
reporter working for a media organization in this city went to his locker and kneeled?
Yep, regularly.
Not kneeled because they were trying to create space because it was super tight and there's people on top trying to shoot. And
that was the power dynamic. Where some of us would stand and
because I've knelt before with on one knee to get my mic in there.
Oh my God, I've head first slid in to do stuff like that.
Yeah, but that's not what you're describing.
Someone who
that is wild.
Who would regularly prostrate themselves in front of Sammy. Yes, and teammates would point and roll their eyes and shoot you a look like, oh, what's going on over there? So I do think that the biggest reparations have to come with the teammates, not with media, not with fans.
Not with the ownership.
Not necessarily with Tom Ricketts. But if you really mean what you say about some of this stuff, and that isn't just about doing steroids.
No, that's about what you're describing now.
Yeah, but you could say it, and you could say in your apology, I use performance-enhancing drugs. Maybe I shouldn't have, and maybe I wouldn't do it all over again, but I did. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You won't be able to convince me he wouldn't do it all over again. Because if he doesn't do it all over again, he doesn't do what he did.
Right. And this sort of
600 plus home runs.
And sure.
Come on, man.
And this reinforces it that ultimately he maybe bet on be brought back in the fold anyway.